The night hung over the forest like a velvet cloak, embroidered with countless stars that flickered like distant fires. A soft wind rustled through the pines, carrying whispers older than memory itself. Beneath this celestial canopy, a lone mother knelt at the edge of her village, her eyes tracing the constellations her ancestors had revered for generations. Her child slept nearby, cradled by the earth, dreaming under a blanket woven from the stories of countless generations. The wind shifted, growing warmer, and with it came a voice soft, yet insistent. It was the language of spirits, one she had learned to understand from the elders. Whispers in rustling leaves, murmurs along the river, the quiet tremble of a hawk's wings overhead. Tonight, the spirits spoke of danger. Great peril approaches, they murmured, almost playfully, almost mournfully. The children, the future, the balance, will be tested. Her heart quickened. She rose, brushing the dew from her hands, and looked over the darkened forest. The shadows danced strangely, as though the trees themselves were moving with an unspoken urgency. Her wolf spirit guide, silver fur glinting in the moonlight, padded silently beside her. Its amber eyes reflected the starlight, unwavering, filled with an intelligence that seemed almost human. "You feel it too," she whispered. Not to the wolf, but to the wind itself. The prophecy. "Is it true?" The wolf barked once, a warning. Or perhaps an answer, and the wind replied in a chorus of leaves, carrying images she could almost see. A child wandering alone, eyes glinting from the darkness. A shadow that slithered between the trees, watching, waiting. Her thoughts turned to the tribe elder, the prophet who had spoken of the whispering wind when she was only a girl. He had said that when the wind carried voices to a mother's heart, it meant that the Great Spirit was speaking directly, demanding courage, vigilance, and sacrifice. She had never felt the weight of such a message until now. The forest around her was alive. Fireflies dotted the undergrowth, like tiny lanterns guiding her steps. An owl called in the distance, its voice deep and resonant, echoing like a drumbeat through the night. Every rustle, every flicker of movement seemed imbued with intention. Even the stars seemed to lean closer, as though to witness what would unfold. The mother knelt beside her child again, brushing a strand of hair from their face. Her fingers lingered on the soft skin, tracing the curve of a cheek, the gentle rise of a small chest with each breath. A shiver ran through her. Unseen eyes, cold and calculating, seemed to watch from the darkness. She could feel them, even if she could not see them. The spirit's warning, whispered through the wind, had a shape now, a shadow that threatened the ones she loved most. Her mind raced. Could this be the danger the elders had spoken of in prophecies? A natural imbalance, a rival tribe, or perhaps something more, something that belonged to the spirit world itself. She remembered the stories of mothers who had walked the forest at night, guided only by the Great Spirit and their unwavering love for their children. They had faced impossible choices, perilous journeys, and enemies that no ordinary eyes could see. And yet, they had endured. "What would you do if the spirits warned you of an unknown danger to your family?" she whispered to herself, the words carried away by the wind. Could she summon the courage to face whatever was coming? Could she protect the child she had brought into this world, a world full of beauty and peril alike? A sudden rustle made her tense. The wolf growled softly, low in its throat, its fur rising along the spine. The mother's heart beat in her ears as she turned, peering into the shadowed trees. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw a figure, a silhouette that did not belong. But when she blinked, it vanished, leaving only the whispering wind. She breathed deeply, grounding herself in the ancient teachings passed down through generations. Her ancestors had faced times of great trial, storms that shattered villages, fires that consumed sacred lands, and enemies that sought to tear families apart. And yet, through courage, wisdom, and unity with the spirits, they had survived. Now, it was her turn. The wolf nuzzled her hand, as if to say, you are not alone." The stars above glimmered, and for a moment, the darkness seemed less threatening, as if nature itself were lending her strength. But the unseen eyes remained, persistent. A reminder that the prophecy was real and that danger was near. The mother whispered a prayer to the Great Spirit, a soft chant that filled the night air with reverence and hope. "Guide me," she said. "Protect my child. Show me the path I must walk." The wind responded with a shiver through the trees, an almost imperceptible answer. The journey had begun. She stood, gathering herself, her gaze sweeping the forest edge. Every shadow, every sound, every movement now held meaning. And as she stepped forward, the whispering wind seemed to follow her. A companion and a warning intertwined. A crow cawed, in the distance a messenger, or perhaps a harbinger, and the mother froze. The child stirred in their sleep, blissfully unaware of the unseen forces gathering around them. Her heart clenched, knowing the path ahead would demand courage beyond imagination, wisdom beyond learning, and love beyond measure. And then, she sensed it again, the eyes, watching, waiting, patient, calculating. The prophecy of the whispering wind was no longer a distant tale. It had arrived in her heart, and she knew, with a clarity that chilled and strengthened her at once, that the night held choices that could change the fate of her child, her tribe, and perhaps the world itself. The wind whispered one last secret before dawn, a message carried on the edge of its sigh. "The trial begins with a single step, mother of courage. Take it, or lose what you hold most sacred." Her hand tightened around the small charm she wore around her neck, a gift from the elder who had once guided her, and she whispered back to the night, to the spirits, to the forest itself, "I will not falter. Whatever comes, I will protect them." And with that, she took her first step into the darkness, unaware that the true test, the one that would demand her courage, her cunning, and the depths of her love, was already waiting. The eyes in the shadows blinked once, then vanished, but their presence lingered, a silent promise. The prophecy had begun. The sun rose over the horizon, spilling golden light across the rolling hills and dense forests surrounding the village. Smoke spiraled from the clay chimneys of the small lodges, carrying the scent of herbs and hearth fires. Birds called to one another in a symphony of morning greetings, and the river nearby gurgled with the same rhythm that had flowed for generations. This was the land of the tribe, a sacred place, alive with spirit, where every tree, rock, and stream was a keeper of stories, memory, and life itself. The mother emerged from her lodge, her child following close behind, eyes still heavy with sleep. She carried the small bundle of morning offerings, sweetgrass, water from the river, and a small feather she had found along the forest edge. As she walked, she taught her child the songs that had been sung by countless mothers before her, songs that honored the Great Spirit, the animal guides, and the ancestors whose wisdom shaped their lives. "Every sound," she whispered, "every word carries power. The birds, the wolves, the wind itself, they listen, and they guide us." Her voice was soft but firm, a gentle echo of the voices that had once guided her own childhood. The child repeated her words carefully, feeling the rhythm of the syllables settle like seeds into the fertile ground of understanding. By mid-morning, the villagers gathered in the heart of the tribe, the sacred circle. It was a clearing in the forest, ringed by ancient stones, etched with carvings of animals, stars, and the Great Spirit. Smoke from the central fire rose like a prayer to the sky. Here, the tribe came together to honor the balance of life, to seek guidance from the spirits, and to protect the children who were the future of their people. The mother led her child to the edge of the circle, joining elders, hunters, and healers who bowed their heads in silent reverence. The elder, a man whose hair was silver as snow and whose eyes held the depth of decades of wisdom, began the morning ritual. He traced patterns in the air with his staff, murmuring words that no ordinary ear could fully comprehend words that carried the power of ancestors and spirits alike. "Respect the Great Spirit in all things," he intoned. "Hear the wind, the water, and the earth. They will guide those who listen. Trust in your animal guides, for they are messengers of the unseen world. Honor the cycles of the sun, the moon, and the seasons, for they mark the rhythm of life itself." The mother nodded, feeling the hum of energy that vibrated through the circle. This sacred space was not merely tradition, it was protection, a shield of harmony that had kept her people safe for generations. Here, knowledge flowed as freely as the river, passed from the elders to mothers, fathers, and children alike. After the ritual, she gathered her child beneath the shade of a large oak. Today, she would teach an important lesson: how to hear the whispers of the forest, how to sense imbalance, and how to respect the spirits that walked unseen alongside them. "Listen carefully," she said, brushing her fingers over the rough bark of the tree. "Every rustle, every shadow, has meaning. The Great Spirit speaks through all things. Remember, our role is to observe, to protect, and to honor what is given to us." As they practiced, a ripple of unease passed through the village. Birds that normally sang at this hour fell silent. The river, which usually sang its bright, cheerful song, sounded muted, almost mournful. Even the smoke from the hearths seemed to twist strangely, as if disturbed by a hand unseen. Rumors began to stir among the villagers. Some whispered of strangers seen at the edge of the forest, shadows moving where no one should be. Others spoke of animals behaving oddly, wolves prowling closer to the village, deer fleeing in panic, crows circling with an unusual intensity. The mother's heart tightened. She had learned to read these signs, to feel the threads of balance in the natural world. Something had shifted. The harmony they relied on was fraying, subtle but undeniable. She touched her child's shoulder, offering a calm smile, even as her instincts warned her of danger. By late afternoon, the elder rose again, his face pale under the firelight as he walked toward the center of the sacred circle. He bent over a patch of earth near the outer stones and ran his hand along the ground. His fingers trembled slightly as he touched what had disturbed the soil. The mother and her child approached, eyes widening in unison. The earth had been dug, uneven and rough, unlike any animal disturbance she had seen. Deep scratches ran across the soil, and small tokens, bones, feathers, and remnants of herbs had been scattered carelessly. "This is no natural intrusion," the elder said, his voice low, carrying the weight of warning. "Something or someone has entered our sacred land. The balance has been broken, and where the balance falters, danger follows." A hush fell over the village. Mothers gathered their children closer, while hunters and warriors exchanged worried glances. The sacred circle, a place meant for protection and guidance, had been violated. The mother felt a chill creep along her spine, a recognition that the prophecy she had felt in the whispering wind was unfolding before her very eyes. The wolf spirit at her side growled softly, its ears twitching toward the forest edge. She looked where it stared, and felt again the pull of unseen eyes, watching, testing, waiting. The child clutched her hand, eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. The elder straightened, his gaze sweeping the village. "We must remain vigilant," he said, voice firm yet calm. "The spirits warn us of imbalance. Tonight, we will gather and watch. But mark my words, the one who enters our land with ill intent does not come without a purpose, and that purpose is often tied to the children." The mother's heart pounded. She remembered the whispered prophecy carried by the wind. The danger was no longer a distant murmur, it was here, tangible, pressing against the boundaries of their sacred space. The village had been a haven, but now it had become a place of uncertainty. As the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the sacred circle, the mother felt the weight of her responsibility. She would teach her child, protect the village, and honor the Great Spirit. But first, She had to understand the threat. The forest held secrets, and the balance of life teetered on the edge of peril. And then, a cry from the edge of the village cut through the quietest sound of surprise, shock, and fear. The elder ran toward the source, and the mother followed, heart in her throat, near the outer stones. The ground had been disturbed once more, deeper this time, as though something unnatural had moved with intention. The elder knelt, pressing his palm against the soil. His eyes widened in horror. "The spirits speak, and they are angry," he whispered. The mother felt her wolf guide tense beside her, a growl rumbling deep in its chest. She tightened her grip on her child's hand, knowing that the trials of courage, wisdom, and protection were only beginning. The sacred circle, once a place of harmony and guidance, had become the first warning. The outside force that threatened their tribe had arrived, and no one could yet predict its full intent. The wind rustled through the trees once more, whispering secrets only the mother seemed to hear. It carried a question, sharp and haunting. Who has entered our sacred land, and why? The answer would not come easily. The night returned, darker and heavier than before, as if the forest itself had drawn a deep, anxious breath. The moon hung low, pale and watchful, casting long shadows across the village. The mother sat outside her lodge, the child asleep in her arms, eyes scanning the edge of the forest. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig, made her pulse quicken. The sacred circle had been violated. The earth had been disturbed, and now the air carried a tension she could not ignore. It was then that she sensed the first true presence of the shadow, a cunning, restless force that did not belong to the natural order. It moved between the trees with the silent precision of a predator, its energy corrupting, mischievous, and greedy. Some called it a trickster spirit. Others, an outsider who had wandered too far into sacred lands, carrying intentions dark and destructive. Whatever it was clever, patient, and dangerous. The elders spoke in hushed tones about such beings, the ones that thrived on imbalance, on fear, on the disruption of harmony. They were shapeshifters, manipulators, and deceivers. And the mother knew, with the instinct of her lineage, that this shadow had set its sights on the children of the tribe. Already, strange occurrences spread through the village. A child's toy would vanish, only to reappear hours later, moved to the far edge of the forest. Footprints appeared where no child had walked, faint and clawed. Animals that were normally calm, deer, rabbits, even small birds, fled the village in panic, as if sensing the same threat that gnawed at the mother's heart. Her wolf guide, restless and alert, padded along her side, ears pricked, eyes scanning the shadows. A raven landed nearby, its black feathers gleaming in the moonlight. Its gaze was sharp, almost accusing, as if it carried a message from the spirit world. The mother followed its movements carefully, aware that animal guides were often harbingers of warning, messengers of things humans could not always perceive. "Something is coming," she whispered, more to herself than to the wolf, "and it wants the children." Her hands brushed over her child's hair, and she felt a chill. It was not from the night air. It was the unease that settled deep in the bones of a mother who knew instinctively when danger was near. She had faced storms, wild beasts, and illness before, but never the insidious gaze of a shadow that could walk unseen, waiting to strike. The village tried to maintain normalcy. Fires were lit, songs were sung, and rituals performed to honor the Great Spirit. But the undercurrent of fear persisted, subtle yet undeniable. The sacred circle, once a place of protection and guidance, now seemed vulnerable, its stones cold and heavy with unspoken tension. In the hours before dawn, she rose to check on the child, moving quietly through the lodge. Her eyes swept a small sleeping space, and there, near the corner where the child's blanket rested, she saw it, a mark etched into the ground, perfectly circular, intricate, and unmistakably ancient. Her breath caught in her throat. It was a symbol of danger, one that had been whispered about in stories, one the elders had taught her to recognize. Its presence here, so close to her child, was no accident. The wolf growled low, a vibration in its chest that resonated with the mother's own heartbeat. The raven cawed again, startling in its sharp insistence, then took flight toward the forest. Its movement seemed deliberate, as if pointing toward something beyond the trees, a path, a warning, or perhaps the trickster itself. The mother traced a symbol with her fingers, feeling the energy it exuded, twisted, restless, unnatural. She remembered the elder's words, where the shadows mark, imbalance follows. Where imbalance grows, the Great Spirit will test those who protect the children. A sudden rustle from the forest edge made her spin. Eyes glimmered in the darkness, reflecting the moonlight. Not animal eyes, nor human, exactly, but something in between, watchful, patient, and cunning. The mother's pulse raced, but she forced herself to remain calm, drawing on the teachings of her ancestors. Fear was natural, but it could not guide her actions. Only wisdom, courage, and intuition could. She whispered a chant under her breath, invoking protection and clarity, words her grandmother had taught her. The air responded with a stirring of leaves, a subtle vibration in the ground beneath her feet. Her wolf pressed closer, while the ravens circled above, a sentinel in the night sky. The shadows shifted again, more movement, faint, yet deliberate. It was as though the trickster or outsider was testing her, seeing how she would respond. She understood then. This was not only a threat of physical danger, but a challenge to her vigilance, to her courage, and to her bond with her child. She knelt beside the mark once more, letting her fingers hover above the intricate lines. The energy pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat not her own. She traced it mentally, memorizing its shape, its rhythm, its warning. The Great Spirit had sent the animal guides to alert her, to guide her understanding. She had to listen. The forest around her seemed to hold its breath. No bird called, no stream whispered. Only the wind, carrying the scent of pine and earth, seemed to murmur in fragmented words. And in that quiet, she felt the weight of responsibility settle firmly upon her shoulders. The shadow was not random. It had a purpose, and that purpose was tied to the children. She looked down at her sleeping child, face serene and unaware of the unseen forces that circled the village. Her fingers tightened around the small talisman at her neck, a charm given to her by the elder for protection and guidance. The symbol's presence, coupled with the eerie warning of the animal guides, was a message she could not ignore. "Mother," the wolf seemed to say with its gaze, "they are here." Her heart clenched. The shadow had crossed into their world, stepping into the sacred balance of the forest. She had felt the whisper of the prophecy, the warning carried on the wind. But now the danger had a shape, an intention, and a focus. It was clever, cunning, and cruel. She breathed deeply, centering herself. The forest had always been alive, and tonight it was alive with threat. But she was alive too, and so were the spirits who walked beside her. In the wolf, in the raven, and in the unseen currents that stirred the leaves. She traced the edges of the mark once more, committing every curve, every line, to memory. It was a message, a warning, and a challenge. The trickster or outsider had left its sign here deliberately, and the mother knew, with unwavering certainty, that the trial for her courage, her wisdom, and her devotion had begun. The wind rustled one last time, carrying a whisper. Watch closely. Protect fiercely. The shadow waits for hesitation. Her eyes swept the forest, shadows stretching and twisting as if alive. Every instinct in her body screamed vigilance. She bent over the child one last time, brushing hair from the sleeping face. The mark remained, the eyes in the darkness lingered, and the whispering wind carried a chilling certainty. The shadow was among them. The dawn was pale and trembling, sunlight filtering in thin streaks through the dense canopy of the forest. Yet even as morning claimed the sky, the mother could not rest. Sleep had abandoned her hours ago, replaced by the quiet urgency of a vision that lingered in her mind, a message that had come in the night from the Great Spirit itself. She knelt at the edge of the sacred circle, eyes closed, breathing slowly, letting the rhythm of the earth and the forest guide her. The vision was clear and unwavering. She must venture alone into the heart of the forest, beyond the known paths, to confront the threat that stalked her children. The Great Spirit's voice had been firm, neither cruel nor tender, but carrying a weight that could not be ignored. Mother of courage, it had whispered, the balance is at stake. Your children are in danger. Step forward, and you shall be tested. Hesitate, and all may be lost. Her heart thumped, each beat echoing the drum of ancestral courage, yet fear gripped her chest like a cold hand. The forest was vast and wild. Shadows moved in ways that defied natural logic. The whispers of the trickster's spirit lingered in her mind, taunting with promises of loss and despair. And yet, the mother knew that no fear could surpass the duty she bore. Her children's lives depended on her courage. She rose slowly, gathering what she would need. First, the charms, small bundles of sweetgrass, carefully tied with sinew, imbued with prayers for protection. A feather from the sacred eagle, gifted by the elders for clarity and vision. Water from the river, pure and cold, carried in a small vessel. Each item was a conduit between her spirit and the Great Spirit, a shield against forces both natural and mystical. She began to chant, her voice soft at first, rising in a rhythmic cadence that blended with the rustling of leaves and the murmur of the river. Words passed down from generations of mothers and guardians flowed through her lips, invocations of protection, courage, and clarity. The wolf, ever her silent companion, circled her feet, ears pricked, as though offering reassurance that she was not alone. The child stirred in their sleep, sensing the tension but unaware of the shadow that pressed closer each hour. The mother brushed their hair gently, whispering a promise. I will protect you. Whatever comes, I will face it, and I will not falter. Her words were more than assurance, they were a vow, binding her courage and love together into a force that would guide her steps. With the morning light stretching across the sacred circle, she stepped forward. The forest awaited, its vastness swallowing her in a wave of green and shadow. Every step was a negotiation between fear and resolve. The soft earth beneath her feet a reminder that she walked a path laid by countless mothers before her. Each had faced trials of spirit and body, and each had left behind wisdom now flowing into her veins. The air grew cooler, the sunlight dimmer, as she moved deeper. She could feel the presence of the trickster or whatever force lingered slinking at the edge of perception. The wind carried whispers, faint but deliberate, teasing her, testing her resolve. Shadows danced among the trees, shifting just beyond the reach of her vision. And the wolf growled low, a rumble that vibrated through the soil. Her pulse quickened. The Great Spirit's guidance had been clear. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it. Each step forward was a testament to that truth. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the rhythm of her heart, then held it outward, toward the forest, offering her determination as a beacon. And then, the forest spoke. Not in words, but in sensation, a shift in the wind, the snap of a twig, the faint scent of something unnatural lingering near her. The shadows around her seemed to tighten, circling closer, their movement purposeful. Her instincts screamed vigilance. She slowed, listening, feeling for the pulse of life that she knew could be trusted. A raven appeared, perched on a branch above, feathers gleaming like midnight. Its gaze met hers, unwavering and intense. She understood the message without words. Proceed, but beware. Danger follows your steps, yet your courage will shape what comes next. She took a deep breath, letting the chant fall silent. The forest, alive with unseen eyes and hidden currents, felt almost sentient. aware of her presence, weighing her heart and her intent. And as she walked, she sensed it, the subtle pressure of being watched, not just by eyes, but by a presence that moved with cunning intelligence, waiting, calculating, testing. The mother's hands tightened around the charms she carried. Sweetgrass, feather, and water were not mere objects, they were extensions of her spirit, bridges to the Great Spirit who guided all living things. She murmured another prayer, invoking protection for her child, clarity for herself, and courage for what lay ahead. Hours passed, though time felt suspended. Sunlight filtered less and less, replaced by the muted green gloom of the deep forest. Her senses sharpened. Every sound was meaningful. Every movement, every ripple in the foliage was a potential warning. And then, she felt it directly. Something moving behind her, subtle, yet deliberate. The shadows were not random. They had intent. They followed her. Her breath caught. The wolf growled, low and steady, ears swiveling toward the movement. The raven cawed sharply from above, then vanished into the trees. She froze, listening, letting the forest reveal its secret. A branch snapped lightly, deliberately proof that the shadow's gaze was fixed upon her, testing her courage, challenging her resolve. Her mind flashed with thoughts of the child she had left behind, sleeping peacefully yet at risk. Fear threatened to overwhelm, but she drew in a deep, centering breath. This was the trial. Courage was the shield that would guard her child, and the heart that would guide her through the darkness. She stepped forward again, slower now, deliberate, sensing the rhythm of the forest, attuned to the whispers, the winds, the eyes that followed her. With each step, she felt herself becoming part of the forest's balance, not as prey, but as protector, as guardian, as Mother Dot. And then, just beyond a fallen log, a movement. The shadows shifted, closer, closer still. As if the unseen presence had grown bold, the mother's heart pounded, but she did not flee. She knelt briefly, touching the earth, feeling its pulse, grounding herself. Her courage was a seed planted deep in her soul, nourished by love, nurtured by wisdom, strengthened by the whispers of her ancestors. She rose, gaze steady, and whispered a vow aloud. Whatever waits, whatever watches, I will face it. I will not falter. My children will not fall while I draw breath. The forest seemed to pause, holding its breath with her, but the shadows did not retreat. They lingered, twisting and shifting, waiting for the first sign of hesitation. And as she stepped forward once more, the mother knew the truth. This trial was far from over. Something followed her, unseen but intent, marking the path she had chosen, testing the courage of a mother willing to risk everything. The Great Spirit's presence thrummed at the edge of perception, and the wolf pressed closer, growling in low warning. The forest whispered, "The trial has begun," and in the hush of the deep woods, the mother stepped further into the unknown, aware that every heartbeat, every choice, would shape the fate of her children, the tribe, and the balance of life itself. The forest grew quieter as she moved deeper, the air thick with the weight of unseen eyes. Shadows coiled and stretched in unnatural ways, twisting the familiar paths into corridors of uncertainty. The mother's senses were on high alert, every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig resonating like a warning drumbeat. She knew instinctively that this was no ordinary danger. The spirits themselves were testing her resolve. Her wolf guide padded silently at her side, ears twitching, eyes scanning the darkness. Above, the ravens circled, black wings cutting through the pale light filtering from the canopy. They were her companions, her guardians, and her guides, but even they seemed uneasy. The deeper she ventured, the more she sensed a presence watching, probing, challenging her at every step. Suddenly, the air shifted. The wind that had always carried comfort and whispers of guidance now turned cold, carrying a voice that was playful and cruel. A trickster spirit had appeared, unseen, yet unmistakably a presence that thrived on fear, chaos, and disruption. "Mother of children," it taunted, voice slipping through the leaves like smoke. "Do you think courage alone can protect what you love? Will you risk your life for little ones who may not even survive? Or will you flee and preserve yourself?" Her heart pounded, but she did not falter. She gripped the charms at her neck, feeling the weight of sweet grass, eagle feather, and river water grounding her spirit. "I do not act from fear," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chill. "I act from love, from duty, from the guidance of the Great Spirit." The trickster's laughter echoed through the trees, twisting the shadows around her. Images sprang into her mind, her child swept away by currents she could not control. Children lost to shadows she could not fight, her own body broken and abandoned. Every vision tested her resolve, each one designed to make her question her strength, her choices, her very will to continue. The wolf growled low, pressing close to her leg. The raven cawed sharply, diving through the branches in warning. They were reminding her that the trial was not just about fear, it was about wisdom, discernment, and trust in herself and the spirits. A voice, softer and warmer, broke through the chorus of fear. Her wolf guide spoke not with words, but with presence, guiding her thoughts. "Do not let the illusions confuse you. Fear is the trickster's tool. Trust in your heart, and in the path the Great Spirit has set before you." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm of her breathing center her. The visions threatened to overwhelm, but she anchored herself in the love she bore for her child, in the lineage of mothers who had walked this very path. Guided by courage and ancestral wisdom, the forest shifted again, and now the trickster's illusions took form. The trees appeared to move, faces appearing in the bark, whispering doubts. "Are you strong enough? Will you survive? Can a single mother overcome what lies ahead?" Her fingers tightened around her charms. She whispered a prayer. "Great Spirit, guide me. Protect my child. Give me clarity and lend me courage. I will not waver, even when shadows test my heart." The illusions surged again, now showing multiple paths each, leading to possible disaster. One path led to a chasm where she saw herself falling endlessly, her cries muffled by wind and darkness. Another path showed her child wandering alone, vulnerable, the forest closing in around them. The trickster's voice teased her from all directions, probing her insecurities, seeking hesitation, seeking failure. And yet, she remembered the lessons of the sacred circle, the teachings of the elders, the songs of mothers sung across generations. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. She focused on the image of her child, the life she had sworn to protect, and the Great Spirit's guidance that had brought her here. The illusions wavered, flickering like mist. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her choice. She whispered to the wolf, her silent confidant, "Lead me. Show me the path that honors life, that protects my child." The wolf pressed forward, and she followed, steps steady and deliberate, even as the trickster's laughter faded into a mocking whisper. The forest gradually shifted back toward clarity, the illusions dissolving into shadow. The path ahead became visible, leading her to a hidden spring, its waters shimmering like liquid silver under the dappled sunlight. She knelt by the spring, hands hovering over the surface, and there reflected in the crystalline water was her child. But something was different. The child's eyes were wide with fear, the tiny hands reaching out toward her, lips moving though no sound came. Then, the reflection spoke cryptically, unnaturally, "Mother, you must choose. The path of courage or the safety you cannot take." Her breath caught. The words were not of the child herself, yet carried the weight of warning, of prophecy, of the unseen forces that shaped the forest. The trickster spirit, she realized, had not left the spring. It had transformed her love, twisting it into a test. To move forward, she had to understand that protecting her child would require sacrifice, trust, and unwavering courage. The wolf growled, a grounding presence in the swirl of fear and uncertainty. The raven perched nearby, watching, as if urging her to heed the message without succumbing to despair. She touched the surface of the spring gently, letting the water ripple her reflection, anchoring herself to reality, to love, and to the guidance of the Great Spirit. "I choose courage," she whispered, her voice firm, echoing softly across the trees. "I choose to face the shadows, to protect my child, to honor the spirits who guide me. Whatever comes, I will not falter." The spring shimmered in response, the reflection of the child softening, the fear melting into understanding, as if acknowledging the choice made. The forest around her seemed to breathe again, the shadows easing, though not vanishing entirely. The trickster's presence lingered, still testing, still waiting, but she had made her stand. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a message she could feel in her chest. The test is not over, the path is set, and the trial deepens. Courage alone is not enough. Wisdom, love, and sacrifice will guide you further. She rose, taking a deep, centering breath, feeling the weight of her choice settle into her bones. The path ahead led deeper into the unknown, where danger, mystery, and trials awaited. But she was ready. Her heart burned with determination, her senses sharp, her spirit fortified by the communion with the Great Spirit and the wisdom of her ancestors. And as she stepped away from the spring, the whispering wind carried a final echo. "You have chosen rightly, but the shadow watches still, and the next test will demand all you hold sacred." The trees grew taller, darker, and closer together as she pressed deeper into the forest. Sunlight barely reached the forest floor, casting everything in a muted green gloom. Shadows seemed to twist unnaturally, moving with intention. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, moss, and something unfamiliar, something corrupted. Her wolf padded silently at her side, senses alert, muscles taut like coiled springs. The raven circled high above, an ever-watchful sentinel. Every step was a challenge. Roots twisted like serpents, threatening to trip her. The wind carried whispers of warning, of unseen eyes observing her, measuring her courage, testing her resolve. She adjusted the charms at her neck, fingers brushing the sweet grass and eagle feather, murmuring a prayer to the Great Spirit. "Guide me, protect me, grant me wisdom to face what lies ahead." The first threat came swiftly. A hidden cliff, concealed by moss and shadows, lurked beneath her feet. She stumbled, nearly falling into a yawning chasm. Heart hammering, she clawed at the earth, gripping roots and stones, until she pulled herself back to solid ground. Her wolf growled low, nudging her forward, grounding her with presence and assurance. Every narrow escape reminded her, this forest was not merely physical, it was a crucible of spirit and courage. A river roared ahead, its rapids white and violent. The water churned with unseen currents that threatened to sweep her away. She paused, eyes scanning the banks, seeking the spirit's guidance. The raven swooped low, wings slicing the air, then perched on a nearby rock, its black eyes locked on her with urgent focus. The wolf stepped carefully along the bank, sniffing the water, gauging its depth. She inhaled, centering herself, placing one foot carefully, then another. She tested the slippery rocks, her hands tracing branches and stones for balance. The current tugged at her with invisible hands, pulling at her will, challenging her resolve. And yet, she pressed forward, her heart a steady drum of determination. She was a mother, a guardian, a protector. She would not falter. Further into the shadows, the forest's magic became palpable. Glowing fungi lined the trunks of ancient trees, illuminating fleeting paths with eerie, ethereal light. Shapes flickered in the corners of her vision, phantoms, illusions, or perhaps messages from the spirit world. A deer with eyes like polished amber appeared, its gaze calm and knowing, then vanished as suddenly as it arrived. The wolf growled, tail stiff, ears flattened. Something watched, something moved closer. The forest itself seemed alive, reacting to her presence. Trees whispered with the wind, streams shifted with deliberate motion, and the shadows stretched, testing her perception and her courage. Every step demanded vigilance, every sound could herald danger. Then, she saw it, the signs of corruption. Broken branches, scorched earth, and shallow pits dug carelessly in sacred soil. Feathers, bones, and herbs lay scattered as if plundered for a ritual unknown. The air vibrated with a sickly energy, unnatural and greedy. This was no ordinary force, it was the work of the trickster, the outsider whose greed had disrupted the balance of the forest. Her pulse quickened. The mother's gaze swept the surroundings, alert to movement, to the subtle signs of life twisted into malice. Here, nature had been violated, harmony destroyed. The spirit's whispers turned into cries of warning. She stepped cautiously, the wolf following silently, its amber eyes scanning the corrupted ground. A low rumble echoed through the trees, a warning, or a threat. She raised her head, and her breath caught. Ahead, hidden behind the dense trunks, she glimpsed a lair, built of stolen treasures and corrupted relics. Branches had been twisted into cages, herbs burned in unnatural patterns, feathers stripped from sacred birds, all arranged with meticulous greed. The energy here was dark, potent, and deliberate. Her heart tightened as she realized the full weight of the danger. The trickster or outsider had not come to test the tribe randomly. This place was the center of its plans, the heart of its desire to manipulate, control, and corrupt. The child she loved, the sacred circle, the balance of life itself, all were threatened by the presence of this being. As she approached cautiously, the shadows shifted. A voice, smooth and mocking, slid between the trees. "I wondered how long it would take you to find this place," it said, tone both playful and sinister. "You are brave. But brave is not enough. You risk everything for children who may never understand your sacrifice." The mother froze, a chill running through her bones. The voice was close, yet no form appeared. The wolf growled, low and menacing, and the ravens circled lower, wings slicing the gloom. An unspoken warning of danger imminent. "Step forward, if you dare," the voice continued, echoing unnaturally through the forest. "But know this, every choice has a cost. Every breath you take brings you closer to the edge, and closer to losing what you hold most sacred." Her fists clenched around the charms, grounding herself in the prayers and rituals that had carried her thus far. She felt the Great Spirit's presence at the edge of her awareness. The steady pulse of the wolf, the watchful eyes of the raven. Courage alone would not suffice. Wisdom, vigilance, and love must guide her steps. The shadows seemed to fold around her, stretching and twisting as if alive, moving with intent. Every tree, every root, every stone was a potential obstacle or weapon, testing her ability to remain calm and precise. The forest was a trial in itself, as much a spiritual challenge as a physical one. And then, a sudden movement, the trickster finally revealing itself. A form shimmered at the edge of the clearing, half seen, half illusory, mocking her with eyes that gleamed with greed and cunning. Its presence radiated danger, a force that could destroy her, her child, and the delicate balance she had fought to protect. The mother's pulse thundered in her ears. She was here, yes, in the heart of the corrupted forest, but the ultimate confrontation had arrived. The wolf growled, the raven cawed sharply, and the shadows seemed to lean in closer. The trickster knew she was here. It had been waiting, watching, preparing. The wind whispered through the trees, "Your courage has brought you this far, but will it be enough?" She tightened her grip on her charms, drawing strength from the Great Spirit and the lineage of mothers who had walked these paths before her. Her heart swelled with determination, even as the shadow loomed larger, dangerous and cunning, a force that threatened everything she held dear. The forest fell into tense silence, holding its breath. The lair of the trickster was revealed, the stakes clear, the danger immediate, and as the first words of confrontation echoed through the shadows, the mother understood that this moment, the trial of survival, of courage, of love, would define not only her fate, but the future of her child. The antagonist stepped forward, voice sharp, mocking, and cold. "So, you have come, and now, all that you love lies within my reach." The mother's eyes met the shadows, steady and unyielding. The trial of courage had brought her here. The final confrontation had begun. The shadows shivered, coalescing into a form that radiated malice and cunning. The trickster stood before her, half seen and shimmering with unnatural light, eyes glinting with greed and cruel amusement. The mother's heart raced, but her hands did not tremble. She gripped the charms around her neck, sweetgrass, eagle feather, and river water, feeling the pulse of ancestral wisdom and the Great Spirit's guidance coursing through her veins. "So, you have come," the antagonist hissed, voice echoing unnaturally among the twisted trees. "You risk everything for children too weak to protect themselves. Why not leave them and save yourself?" Her voice was firm, unwavering. "They are not yours to take. They are under the Great Spirit's protection, and I will not falter." The trickster laughed, a sound like cracking ice, and shadows coiled around its form, threatening to swallow her whole. The forest seemed to pulse with anticipation, the very air vibrating with danger, but she did not step back. She had walked through fear, illusions, and trials of the spirit. This was the culmination, the moment when courage and wisdom would be tested against cunning and malice. She raised her hands, invoking the Great Spirit with chants taught by the elders, words carrying centuries of protection, guidance, and power. The charms pulsed with energy, sweetgrass and feathers shimmering in the dim light, as though resonating with the invocation. The wolf growled, stepping forward, teeth bared. The raven cawed sharply, diving toward the antagonist, talons slicing the shadows like knives. The trickster lunged, shadows twisting into sharp shapes, aiming to strike her down. Instinct and training kicked in. She ducked, sidestepped, and used a branch to deflect the first assault. The wolf leaped beside her, teeth sinking into the shadow's tendrils, holding it momentarily at bay. The raven circled above, dropping a small stone imbued with her prayers at the trickster's feet, creating a burst of blinding light. She did not fight blindly. She observed the patterns, the way the shadows moved, the tricks and the illusions, the weaknesses hidden within the antagonist's form. Her chants grew louder, intertwining with the rhythms of the forest, rustling leaves, flowing streams, and distant birds. The Great Spirit was present, guiding her actions, lending strength to her courage and clarity to her insight. The trickster snarled, a hiss of fury echoing through the corrupted clearing. It struck again, more cunning, more aggressive, but the mother anticipated each move. She pivoted, using the momentum to turn the attack back toward the shadows themselves, dispersing the malice into the forest floor, where the earth drank it and neutralized its power. Her wolf and raven were not alone. From deeper within the forest, other animal guides appeared, wolves emerging silently from the underbrush, eagles circling high above, their cries piercing the darkness. Deer and foxes moved in patterns that seemed protective, creating subtle barriers against the shadow. Nature itself had joined the battle, responding to her courage and the invocation of the Great Spirit. Sweat dripped from her brow, her arms ached, and yet she did not falter. Every strike, every chant, every movement was a prayer in action, a fusion of heart, spirit, and wisdom. The trickster screeched in frustration, its form flickering, weakening as her courage and the collective will of the forest grew stronger. And then she saw them, her children, bound by twisted roots and vines, their eyes wide with fear. The shadow had intended to break her resolve by threatening the most sacred part of her heart. Her chest tightened, her maternal love, the deepest and most powerful force she had ever known, surged through her. She whispered a final invocation, voice trembling yet resolute. By the Great Spirit, by the wisdom of my ancestors, and by the love that flows eternal, I reclaim what is sacred. You shall harm none under my watch. The charms at her neck glowed, a bright, ethereal light spilling across the clearing. The vines restraining the children writhed, then dissolved into harmless mist. The trickster recoiled, hissing, its form faltering under the force of her will and the spiritual energy summoned through courage and love. She sprinted forward, scooping her children into her arms. They clung to her, small and trembling, but safe. Tears ran down her face, a mixture of relief, fear, and overwhelming love. I am here. You are safe. You are mine. The wolf flanked her, protective and fierce, while the raven dove and screeched, harrying the shadow as it attempted one final strike. The mother planted her feet, closing her eyes for a brief moment, channeling all her energy into a protective barrier that emanated outward. The trickster shrieked, dissipating into thin, dark mist that scattered like smoke in the wind. The forest seemed to exhale, shadows receding, corrupted energy dispersing. Sunlight broke through the canopy, illuminating the clearing in golden rays. The children looked up at her, faces pale but safe, eyes reflecting awe and gratitude. The wolf nuzzled her hand. The raven perched upon a branch nearby, and all around. The forest seemed to hum with life restored. The mother knelt, holding her children close, feeling the rhythm of their hearts against her own. The fear, the trials, the illusions they had, all led to this moment. The lessons of courage, wisdom, and maternal love had been tested, and she had prevailed. We are safe, she whispered, though the forest around her remained alert, alive with residual energy. The Great Spirit protects us, and we honor the balance of life. Her children clung to her, voices small but earnest. Mama, you saved us? She smiled through tears, pressing their foreheads together in a sacred gesture taught through generations. We saved each other. Love is the strongest shield of all. But even as relief washed over her, the forest shifted. The ground trembled slightly, leaves shivered, and distant branches snapped with unnatural force. A cold wind swept through, carrying a whisper not entirely familiar, not entirely threatening, but heavy with significance. The wolf growled, ears flattened, eyes fixed on the deeper forest. The raven cawed sharply, circling higher. She felt it too, the pulse of something larger, something beyond the trickster, something that had yet to reveal its true presence. Her children nestled against her chest, sensing tension once more. She tightened her grip on them, instincts alert. The battle had been won, yes, but the forest itself seemed to be testing her still, reminding her that courage was never truly complete, that vigilance must always endure. The Great Spirit's presence hummed faintly, offering reassurance, yet even the divine energy acknowledged that trials often came in layers. The trickster had been only one challenge. The forest, alive with spirit, magic, and mystery, hinted at greater tests, two contests that would probe not just her courage, but the very limits of her love and wisdom. Her gaze swept the horizon. The clearing where shadows had been vanishing now bathed in golden light. Her children were safe, her companions loyal, and yet, in her heart, she knew this was not the end. The forest had more to teach, more to reveal, and the whispering wind carried a message she could not ignore. The path is not complete, it seemed to say. The final trial awaits. Stand ready, for balance must always be defended. The mother's jaw tightened, resolve hardening like steel tempered in fire. She had faced the shadows, confronted death and deceit, and emerged victorious. But she would not underestimate what lay ahead. Every step she took, every breath she drew, every choice she made would carry the weight of life, love, and the sacred trust placed upon her by ancestors and spirits alike. She lifted her children, eyes scanning the forest, ready to continue. ready to face whatever remained. The sun touched the treetops, the wolf at her side, the raven circling overhead. And in that perfect alignment of courage, spirit, and love, she whispered a vow. We will face it all. Together, we will endure. Whatever waits, the Great Spirit guides our path, and nothing shall break the bond of mother and child. And yet, beneath the surface, the forest trembled once more. Was this the final test, or something greater still lurking in the heart of the shadows? The forest slowly returned to its natural rhythm. The corrupted shadows had dissolved, the sickly energy that had hung over the trees dissipating like morning mist. Sunlight poured through the canopy, illuminating patches of moss, glimmering streams, and leaves painted gold by the early afternoon. Birds sang once more, and even the wind seemed gentle, carrying a sense of relief and restoration. The mother walked with her children toward the village, the wolf padding silently at her side, the raven circling above. Their footsteps were steady, deliberate, yet lightened by the knowledge that survival, courage, and wisdom had carried them through the heart of the forest. The villagers, sensing the shift in energy from afar, gathered at the edge of the sacred circle, waiting with anxious anticipation. When the mother emerged, carrying her children in her arms, the tribe fell silent for a moment, the weight of what had transpired settling over everyone. Then, slowly, voices rose in reverence, murmurs of awe and gratitude echoing through the trees. Elders stepped forward, bowing in respect, acknowledging the bravery that had protected not just the children, but the balance of the village and the forest itself. Mother of courage, one elder said, voice solemn yet warm, you have walked the path that few could endure. Your heart, guided by love and the Great Spirit, has shielded what is sacred. We honor you. The mother inclined her head, humble and unassuming, her gaze resting on her children. She knew she had not acted alone. The Great Spirit, the animal guides, the wisdom of ancestors, and the very energy of the forest had walked with her every step of the way. Her own courage had been necessary, but it was only part of the greater force that protected life. The children, still in her arms, seemed changed. Their eyes sparkled with something ancient, something deeper than ordinary understanding. The elder watched closely and smiled, noticing small signs of spiritual awakening, a subtle affinity for the natural world, a reverence for the animals, and moments of wisdom far beyond their years. The trials of the forest had opened channels to ancestral knowledge and connection. One child reached out instinctively toward a small wolf pup emerging from the edge of the forest. The pup nuzzled their hand, and the child's face lit with recognition, as though understanding a secret language of the wild. Another child tilted their head toward the sky, pointing to an eagle circling high above, and whispered a name they had never been taught, but somehow knew. The elders nodded knowingly. These children had been touched by the spirits, gifted with insight that would guide them throughout life. The mother knelt in the center of the sacred circle, hands pressed to the earth, whispering prayers of gratitude. Thank you, Great Spirit. Thank you, ancestors, for guidance, for courage, and for protection. She felt the gentle brush of wind against her Fisa sign. She understood that the ancestors were present, offering reassurance and affirmation. Then, the wolf pressed close, nudging her hand as if reminding her that vigilance never ended. The raven cawed softly, circling, before perching on her shoulder. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to listen to the whispers of the ancestors, the hum of the forest, the heartbeat of her children, a voice, soft and ethereal, carried on the wind. Remember, courage alone is fleeting. Respect for life, vigilance in the face of imbalance, and honor toward the spirits are eternal responsibilities. Guard them well, and teach what you have learned. Your path is now theirs, and theirs will shape the world. The mother nodded, a mixture of awe and humility filling her chest. She understood that her journey, while monumental, was part of a larger cycle, The knowledge she had gained, the courage she had embodied, was a gift to be shared, a legacy to teach the next generation. Every choice, every act of protection, every connection to the Great Spirit and the forest was now part of a continuum stretching back through time, carried forward by her children. The tribe gathered around the sacred circle, forming a living ring of community, reverence, and protection. Fires were lit, dances began, and songs of gratitude rose to the sky. The mother held her children close, feeling the rhythm of the drumbeat match the pulse of her heart. This celebration was not merely for survival, it was for the restoration of harmony, for the reaffirmation of life, and for the acknowledgement of the sacred responsibilities shared by all. Elders took turns offering blessings, recounting stories of mothers who had walked similar paths, who had risked everything to protect life and preserve balance. Each tale wove into the mother's experience, forming a tapestry of courage, love, and wisdom. She listened intently, knowing that her own story would now join the chorus of legends, teaching lessons for generations yet to come. As night fell, stars glittered above the sacred circle, their light mirrored in the eyes of the children. The wind whispered again, soft and mysterious, carrying both reassurance and a hint of challenge. The mother closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of her children against her chest, the presence of the wolf at her feet, the raven perched nearby, and the pulse of the forest enveloping them all. "Rest now," she whispered, "but remember, the Great Spirit watches, and our duty endures. Harmony is fragile, and courage is eternal." Her children nestled into her embrace, murmuring words that reflected the wisdom awakening within them. She knew they would carry this knowledge forward, attuned to the spirits, to the land, and to the values of love, courage, and respect. Their lives were now linked intricately to the rhythms of the forest, to the legacy of their ancestors, and to the sacred responsibilities that stretched far beyond this moment. The mother rose slowly, allowing her gaze to sweep across the village and the forest beyond. Everything seemed at peace, yet she sensed the subtle pulse of unseen forces, a reminder that vigilance was never truly complete. Her heart was full, yet alert, knowing that while one trial had ended, the dance of life and the whispers of the spirits were ongoing. And as she looked toward the horizon, the wind carried a new whisper, faint but insistent, weaving through the trees and across the sacred circle. "Another story awaits. Another trial will come. Prepare your heart, your spirit, and your children." She inhaled deeply, feeling both the weight and the gift of her experiences. Courage, wisdom, love, and vigilance were not burdens. They were sacred responsibilities, eternal and unbroken. Her children, the future bearers of ancestral knowledge, pressed close, and she knew that whatever lay ahead, the bond between mother, child, and spirit world would endure. The celebration continued around her, laughter, song, and dance mingling with the whispers of the ancestors. The forest, once again balanced, hummed softly, affirming life, harmony, and resilience. And yet, at the edge of her awareness, the promise of another story lingered, a gentle tremor in the wind, reminding her that the path of courage and wisdom is never truly complete. The mother sat with her children, embracing them, feeling the pulse of the sacred circle, the forest, and the spirits themselves. She had faced shadows, illusions, and death, and emerged victorious not alone, but with guidance, protection, and the unbreakable bond of love. And she knew, with quiet certainty, that the gifts of the ancestors would continue to guide them, as long as they honored courage, vigilance, and respect for the eternal balance of life. The first light of dawn filtered gently through the canopy, painting the sacred circle in soft hues of gold and green. The air smelled of wet earth, sweet grass, and smoke from ceremonial fires. The forest, once a stage of shadow and fear, now breathed harmony and calm, its rhythm steady and reassuring. Birds sang with newfound clarity. their songs weaving through the trees like threads of hope. The tribe gathered in a wide circle, elders and children alike, holding hands and forming a living ring of protection, unity, and renewal. The mother, standing at the center, felt the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, the heartbeat of the Great Spirit flowing through the sacred circle. Around her, the faces of her children glowed with innocence and burgeoning wisdom, a testament to the trials they had survived and the lessons they had absorbed. Elders led the ceremony, their voices rising in chants that had echoed through generations. Smoke from burning herbs spiraled upward, carrying prayers to the heavens. The mother closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, feeling the cleansing energy wrap around her like a protective cloak. The forest hummed with approval, as if it too participated in this act of restoration. Balance must be honored, one elder intoned, and those who have faced darkness must help guide the light. Let courage, wisdom, and love flow through this circle, mending what was broken. The mother opened her eyes and looked at the younger women and children who had gathered around. She knelt and drew a line in the earth with a stick, forming a smaller circle within the sacred circle. This intimate space became a classroom, a space of teaching, where she would pass on the knowledge gained through trials, courage, and communion with the spirits. Listen closely, she began, her voice calm yet filled with authority. Courage is not absence of fear, it is the choice to act, even when shadows loom and danger calls. Protection is not only strength of arms, but strength of heart, mind, and spirit. The Great Spirit watches, guides, and lends power, but it is our duty to honor that guidance, to walk in balance, and to teach what we have learned. She spoke of the trickster, the trials of the forest, and the illusions that sought to confuse and frighten. Her children, seated beside her, listened intently, their small hands resting on the earth as though absorbing the wisdom from the soil itself. She told stories of the wolf and the raven, of animal guides that appeared in moments of peril, emphasizing that courage alone could not triumph without respect for the spirits and the natural world. Do not underestimate the power of fear, she warned. It can cloud judgment, twist the mind, and lead even the strongest astray. But when fear is tempered by wisdom, grounded in love, and guided by the Great Spirit, it becomes a teacher, not a tyrant. The younger women mirrored her actions, kneeling beside her, holding their own charms and whispering prayers. She taught them how to prepare for spiritual journeys, offerings of herbs, protective chants, and the importance of honoring ancestral guidance. The children learned to recognize signs in nature, the rustle of leaves as messages, the flight of birds as warnings, and the presence of animal guides as reassurance. As the ceremony progressed, a soft wind swirled around the circle, lifting smoke and leaves in gentle arcs. The mother felt a profound connection, not just to her children, not just to the tribe, but to the generations before her who had walked similar paths, and to those yet to come who would benefit from these lessons. Fear and trauma, though once powerful, were now replaced by hope, courage, and the strength of community. The elders led the final portion of the cleansing ritual. They sprinkled water from sacred springs around the circle, chanting blessings that promised renewal and protection. The mother dipped her hands into the water, letting the cool liquid flow over her fingers, washing away the residue of shadow and doubt. She touched her children's foreheads, whispering words of love and reassurance, promising to guide them and protect them as the Great Spirit had guided her. The wolf padded through the circle, nudging the children gently, acknowledging their connection to the wild and to the ancestral wisdom they were beginning to inherit. The raven perched on a low branch, its black eyes gleaming as it watched the lessons unfold. Together, the animals and the humans formed a bond of mutual respect and understanding, each acknowledging the sacred duty to protect and preserve the balance of life. The mother paused, looking around at the faces of her tribe. Gratitude and reverence shone in every eye, yet she remained humble, knowing that survival and victory were not her achievements alone. The Great Spirit, the ancestors, and the courage of those around her had woven together to create this moment of healing. She was but a vessel, a guide, a protector in a line of mothers who had walked similar paths for generations. As the ceremony ended, the mother led the children to the edge of the sacred circle. They looked up at the sky, where the first stars appeared, shimmering faintly against the darkening blue. She knelt, pointing to the constellations, tracing shapes with her finger. "These stars tell stories," she said softly. "Stories of courage, of wisdom, of love that protects life. They remind us that we are never alone, and that every choice matters. We honor those who came before us, and we prepare to guide those who come after." The wind carried a gentle whisper, threading through the trees, lifting leaves, and stirring the air around them. The mother closed her eyes, letting the message sink in, a reminder that vigilance, respect, and courage were eternal responsibilities. She felt the pulse of the forest, the presence of ancestors, and the bond of her children's hands in hers. Each heartbeat a testament to the lessons of survival, love, and protection. Yet even in this moment of calm, a flicker of awareness tugged at her consciousness. The stars shimmered more brightly in one corner of the sky, as if a story, yet untold, waited beyond the horizon. The whispers of the wind hinted at a prophecy, a journey yet to unfold, a challenge that would demand courage once more. The mother lifted her gaze, holding her children close, her voice steady and filled with quiet determination. "We have learned, we have grown, and we have survived, but the path never truly ends. Listen to the wind, honor the spirits, and remain vigilant. The stories are endless, and the lessons eternal." Her children leaned against her, faces serene but alert, eyes reflecting both awe and understanding. The younger women mirrored her stance, ready to continue teaching, to honor the knowledge passed to them, and to ensure that the circle of wisdom would never be broken. As night fully descended, the sacred circle glowed softly in the moonlight. Fires flickered gently, casting shadows that danced like memories of trials faced and victories earned. The mother held her children, felt the warmth of her tribe around her, and understood that the healing was more than physical. It was spiritual, emotional, and communal. The Great Spirit whispered again through the trees, the wolf's low rumble resonating in harmony, and the raven's caw slicing the night. The lessons of courage, protection, and spiritual wisdom had been shared, yet the story was not complete. The wind carried a hint of prophecy, a promise that another tale, another trial, awaited those willing to listen and act. The mother's gaze lifted to the stars, her silhouette bathed in moonlight, her children safe at her side. She knew the cycle of courage, vigilance, and wisdom would continue, carried forward by her hands, her voice, and her heart. And though this trial had ended, the next chapter was already stirring in the whispering wind. The night was calm, the sacred circle bathed in the silver glow of moonlight. The fires of the village had dimmed, leaving only faint embers. But the air was alive with the lingering pulse of life, courage, and renewal. The mother sat on a soft patch of moss at the edge of the forest, her children asleep in a blanket at her side. The wolf lay close, chest rising and falling with steady breaths, and the raven perched silently nearby, eyes glinting like polished onyx. She breathed in the rhythm of the earth, the whisper of the trees, and the quiet hum of the spirits, feeling the weight of all she had endured and the depth of the lessons she carried forward. The wind stirred, gentle and melodic, weaving through the trees, carrying echoes of past trials and whispers of those who had come before her. Ancestors spoke in subtle ways through the rustle of leaves, the cry of a distant bird, the warmth of the fire long extinguished. Their voices intertwined with her own thoughts, reminding her of the eternal cycle of courage, love, and sacrifice that mothers had always carried. She thought back to the prophecy, the whispered warning of the Great Spirit, On that sacred night, a danger had loomed, unseen and insidious, threatening the lives and spirits of the children entrusted to her care. It was a danger both physical and spiritual, testing not only her strength, but the depth of her love and the clarity of her wisdom. Many could have turned away in fear, but she had chosen the path of courage, knowing that to protect life, especially the fragile and precious lives of children, sometimes demanded the ultimate risk. The forest itself seemed to honor that choice. The trees had watched silently as she faced shadows, illusions, and the cunning of the trickster. Animal guides had appeared in timely moments, offering strength, guidance, and protection. Her wolf, the silent sentinel, had shared in every perilous step. The raven, ever watchful, had reminded her that knowledge and insight were as important as physical courage. Even the wind, subtle yet persistent, carried the presence of ancestors who had faced their own trials and who now spoke through the lessons of the forest. The mother's heart swelled with understanding. Native American mothers of all times had faced similar crucibles, threats not always visible, challenges not always conquerable by strength alone. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the conscious choice to face it, guided by love, intuition, and the wisdom passed down through generations. Mothers had protected not just lives, but spirits, traditions, and the delicate harmony between humans, nature, and the unseen realms. She looked at her children, sleeping peacefully under the blanket she had wrapped around them. Each rise and fall of their chests reminded her of the fragility of life and the sacredness of her role. She had seen them in danger, had felt the pull of fear like a living weight in her chest, and yet she had acted. Her courage had not been for herself alone, it had been for them, for the continuity of life, for the preservation of wisdom that could only survive through those who live and learn. The wolf shifted, nuzzling her hand, and she felt a surge of gratitude. The animal, a companion and protector, reminded her that courage is often shared. The strength to act comes not only from within, but from the connections we cultivate with allies, with spirits, with the natural world itself. Courage multiplies when it is rooted in community, in love, and in the sacred trust between life forms. The raven's call broke her reverie, sharp and clear. She understood the message immediately. Vigilance must continue, even after the battle is won. Protection is a continuous responsibility. The shadows may have been vanquished, but life is a cycle of challenges, each calling forth wisdom, courage, and discernment. It was a reminder that the lessons of the past remain relevant to the present. The sacrifices of mothers, the guidance of ancestors, and the ever-watchful spirits are threads that weave through time, creating a fabric of endurance, hope, and understanding. The mother's thoughts turned outward, beyond the sacred circle, beyond the village, beyond the forest. She considered all the children she might never meet, all the families facing unseen dangers, all the communities struggling to preserve harmony in a world that often tests patience, courage, and morality. The stories she had lived, though specific to her tribe and her forest, carried universal truths, that love can drive acts of extraordinary bravery, that wisdom is found in both the visible and unseen, and that sacrifice, when guided by purpose and principle, creates a legacy that transcends time. She traced her fingers over the soil, feeling the imprints of footsteps, both literal and spiritual. Each mark was a story, a memory, a lesson preserved for those who followed. Just as the trickster had threatened chaos, fear, and corruption, so too did life continually present obstacles, requiring vigilance, discernment, and unwavering care. Mothers had always been the first line of protection, not merely guarding physical life, but safeguarding culture, spirit, and the moral compass of future generations. The children stirred, sensing her quiet reflection. One yawned and stretched, eyes blinking against the soft moonlight, yet instinctively reached for her hand. She held it gently, heart swelling with a mix of pride relief, and awe. "You are part of a great lineage," she whispered, "a lineage of mothers who faced shadows and chose courage, who honored the spirits, and who protected life with every fiber of their being. Remember that courage is eternal, and love is the strongest shield of all." The wind responded with a gentle swirl, lifting leaves and petals, circling them in a dance that seemed orchestrated by the Great Spirit itself. The wolf stretched, the raven cawed softly, and the forest exhaled a collective breath of life restored. The sacred circle, once a place of fear and trial, had become a sanctuary of learning, gratitude, and reflection. The mother felt the presence of her ancestors more strongly than ever, as if they were seated beside her, observing, guiding, and affirming her path. She rose slowly, children in her arms, and gazed up at the night sky. Stars shimmered with clarity, each one a symbol of stories, wisdom, and courage carried forward through generations. She traced constellations with her finger, recounting stories of legendary mothers, heroes, and guardians who had acted with unwavering resolve to protect life and harmony. She understood that every act of courage, no matter how small, contributes to the collective strength of a community and the continuity of ancestral wisdom. Her voice, soft yet resonant, carried into the night. "Love is not a passive feeling, it is action. Courage is not merely boldness, it is purpose. To protect life, to honor the spirits, and to maintain balance with the world around us is the highest calling." Mothers of every time have risked everything because they understood this truth. They understood that the future rests in the hands of the living, guided by the lessons of the past and the vigilance of the present. The children listened, eyes wide, absorbing the weight and wonder of her words. The wolf nudged one child gently, as if emphasizing the truth that all life is connected. The raven soared above, a silent reminder that wisdom often comes from the skies, from distant perspectives, and from the unseen forces that influence life in ways that are not immediately apparent. The mother took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the forest, the rhythm of the sacred circle, and the presence of the Great Spirit within her. She understood that courage and love are intertwined, that sacrifice is both a challenge and a gift, and that protection is an enduring responsibility, not a single act. Mothers, in their timeless role, carried this legacy forward, not only through the lives of their children, but through the continuation of culture, morality, and spiritual understanding. Her gaze swept across the village, the sacred circle, and the forest beyond. The fires had dimmed, but the light of courage burned brightly in her heart. The wind whispered once more, a gentle promise of lessons yet to come, challenges yet to face, and stories yet to be written. The mother closed her eyes, feeling the full weight of her journey and the immeasurable depth of the legacy she would leave behind. "We endure," she whispered softly, "because we love. We act because we must. We teach because life demands it. And through every shadow, every trial, and every test, courage remains eternal, and love remains unbroken." Her children nestled against her, their small hands resting on hers, embodying both the past and the future. The wolf settled at her feet, the raven perched silently, and the forest breathed in quiet harmony. She knew that the story of her courage, and the courage of all mothers like her, would continue through the children, through the tribe, and through every generation that honors the bond between love, protection, and spiritual guidance. And as the first light of dawn began to crest the horizon, the mother looked up once more to the stars, tracing patterns in the sky that had guided countless ancestors. Another prophecy lingered in the wind, a whisper of trials yet to come, but she was ready. Her heart, fortified by love and courage, her spirit, strengthened by ancestral wisdom, and her children, awakened to the mysteries of the world, would face whatever the future held. The legacy of courage, she understood, was not a single act. It was a living, breathing force, a bond between mother and child, between the living and the spirits, between the past, present, and future. It was eternal, unbroken, and unwavering. And as long as mothers continued to act with love, wisdom, and courage, the stories of survival, protection, and balance would endure forever. The sacred circle glowed faintly in the new morning light, a testament to trials faced, lessons learned, and the enduring spirit of those who protect life. The mother, her children, and the tribe would continue to walk this path, guided by the Great Spirit, their ancestors, and the eternal lessons of courage. And in that moment, beneath the canopy of stars slowly fading into dawn, the story of love, sacrifice, and enduring bravery reached its timeless truth, that mothers, in their profound devotion, are the first guardians of life, and their courage echoes through eternity.